Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassell. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. And good evening once again, and welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. This is the program where the paranormal becomes the normal. And I am your host, Willie Hassell, your gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And always, as always, she is the lovely, she is the mystical, she is the mysterious. She is Lynn Nickerson. Good evening.
Good evening, Willie.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. Is my mic on all right?
Your mic is
hopefully.
on, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I can hear you fine.
Okay, well, I bet you're real grateful that we're not living in Buffalo.
You know, of all the places on earth, Buffalo is probably the last one that I would want to live in.
It's got to be a nightmare. 7 feet of snow.
You know, I think it snows in Buffalo in August.
The place is scary.
It's always snowing in Buffalo.
New England's not so bad after all, huh?
I didn't say that. Let's not go that far. I mean, come on now, really. You know.
I'm making grand statements here.
I know what you are.
Well, we've got our guest on the phone.
Yes, we do.
And
so, would you like me to introduce our guest then?
That would be great.
You think that'd be a good idea? All right. Well, tonight our guest on the show is Joni Mayhan. And Joni is a paranormal investigator and author from Central Massachusetts. And after surviving a horrific experience during a paranormal investigation, she went on to write a book called The Soul Collector, which has become an Amazon.com bestseller. And her latest book, Bones in the Basement, Surviving the S.K. Pierce Haunted Mansion, is the true story of Edwin Gonzalez and Lillian Otero, the current owners of the haunted Victorian mansion in Gardner, Mass. They were both non-believers when they purchased the old Victorian, which was Lillian's dream house. Strange things started to happen even before they moved in, and by the fall of 2011, they barely escaped with their lives. So let us please welcome to Spirit Radio, Joni Mayhan.
Welcome, Joni.
Good evening, Joni.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on.
Oh,
our pleasure.
Yes, our pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
And where are you right now? You're in Indiana?
I am. I'm in Evansville, Indiana, which is my hometown.
Oh.
Visiting with my family.
Great.
Oh, Evansville. Okay. Now I know where you are.
So you're still in our time zone, right?
Yes, I'm in a different time zone. So I had a book signing earlier today in Evansville, and I managed to get home and charge my phone up in time.
Oh, good. We're grateful.
It's a busy day for me today.
Okay, so you did have a book signing. I wasn't sure about that. I thought I had seen that on Facebook, and then I didn't see any more mention of it recently, so I wasn't sure. So how did that go?
It went really well. I decided to shake it up a little bit instead of having it at the typical, Barnes & Nobles or a bookseller. I had it at a trendy coffee shop downtown Evansville and called Penny Lane Coffee House. And it was just phenomenal. It was so great. It was comfortable. People came in and out, and, we just kind of commanded the entire front of the building and just sat around and talked, and it was really great. And everybody had coffee, and I signed books, and we talked about ghosts, and The building itself is actually haunted. I knew that because I went on their website and saw where an investigator had gone down there. So she asked me, Megan, the manager, asked me if I wanted to go check it out, and I said, well, of course. So
Sure.
we went down after the book signing, me and a group of friends that were still there from the signing, and we did probably a 10-minute investigation, and she filmed it, so she's going to put up a link on their website of what we did. But we had the ghost box going. We got a couple of responses. It was really hard to tell if it was just radio interference or if it was a reaction, but I did record the whole thing, so once I have a chance to listen to my audio recording, I'll know for sure. But it was fun anyways.
Good.
Well, what better place to do a book signing for paranormal
Than a
book
haunted building.
than a haunted bookstore?
Oh, absolutely. It was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Joni, I've got a question for you. I'm not really familiar with the Soul Collector. What was it that happened to you that started the book?
Well, I've always been a sensitive, but I really kind of pushed back on my abilities until, quite a few years ago. But I started investigating, and it was like having a new toy. I hear a ringing in my ears, and I thought it was, I knew it really wasn't, but I pushed back and said it was tinnitus. I convinced myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started ghost hunting, and I realized that when people have tinnitus, their ears ring all the time, and it's constant steady. And mine was localized to a spot in the corner. If I got closer, the sound got louder. If I got further away, the sound got softer, and there were actually different tones. Sometimes they swirled in and out of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to realize that I was clairaudient, and that I was actually hearing, the vibration or the sound that a ghost makes. And then the more I started playing with it, the more I realized that I also had some mediumistic abilities. I started getting very clear impressions and some messages. And so I went off and, treated it like a new toy, and I went investigating as much as I could. And I went to a location that I'd spent really all summer going out to, but I went out, I was in a very bad state of mind. I just ended a 2-year relationship, or, it was ended.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty devastated, and my friend called me and said, hey, let's go ghost hunting. That'll get your mind off of things. And I was depressed, and I went out, and my defenses were down. And so this entity that had been out there all summer watching me had a chance to finally attach to me. And he was very, very bad. Some people say that he was demonic. I hate jumping on the demonic bandwagon because everybody claims everything's demonic, and I don't know for certain. But he was with me for several months, and this is my true story about having a very negative attachment that was with me 24/7 for months, and me trying to get rid of it. And it was quite terrifying, and I kind of wrote it as a what not to do about ghost hunting. If you're sensitive, do not go if you're not in
the right frame of mind.
Because you could pick something up and it could follow you home.
But do you kind of take precautions, like as in blessing yourself and asking for guidance and protection?
I do.
Good.
And I really didn't in that case, but I do now. But I still have issues with entities following me. It's pretty common.
You still do?
With me, and it doesn't seem to matter what I do or don't do. They still follow me, and people have told me that I'm a beacon. They really like my energy, and they're hoping that they can either use my energy or perhaps I could help them. And I'm not quite to the stage where I can help them yet. So I'm just learning as I go and hoping that I get connected with somebody that eventually brings me to the next piece of the puzzle that helps me figure this all out.
Do you feel that it's the same negative entity that's hanging around? Did you get rid of that?
Yeah, it's been different entities. Soul
Okay.
Collector, they did finally get it off of me. It took a lot. It took a long time, but
Did you get
it's
help?
finally gone, and it's different ones, and I can tell by the tones, that it's a different one. I can tell male and female. A lot of times I get impressions of who it is.
Oh my gosh.
Was Bone Collector, was that your first book?
Soul Collector, yes.
Soul
Well, it
Collector.
was not my first book. It was my first paranormal true story.
Oh, okay.
I have 8 books.
Oh,
8
okay.
books?
Yeah, I have 8 books. I have my true paranormal story, which is Soul Collector, and then the other true paranormal story is Bones in the Basement. And then I also wrote kind of a guideline for people like me that are sensitive, that are just getting into ghost hunting, and just warning them, here's what you need to do, be careful, and suggesting all the different protection practices that they can, employ to keep themselves from getting into a situation like I got into. And then I have two book series, both paranormal mysteries.
Oh, really? That's wonderful.
Okay.
We weren't aware
All right.
of that.
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
And you are working on a new book now, too, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of, I have a trilogy that I'm working on. I've finished the first two books, and I have the third one to go, and it's the Winter Woods trilogy, and it does follow a paranormal angle. It's a mystery. It's very suspenseful, and it's quite scary. People are telling me they have a hard time sleeping after reading it, but I guess that's the goal.
Yeah, I guess that means you did your job.
So it's kind of like
Yeah.
paranormal fiction?
What's that?
The book is paranormal fiction? Novels?
Yeah,
Is that what they
it
are?
is. It follows the story of a girl named Winter Woods, and she's albino, and she's a twin. And her twin sister is named the Summer, and she's, blonde and gorgeous, and, Winter's albino, and she's still very pretty, but she's lived a life of having to always fight back against, prejudice and taunting. And they move into the caretaker's cottage of the cemetery where her father is the caretaker.
Ew.
And she comes across the Ouija board in the closet and starts using it. And from that point on, the story takes off with what happens to her after she uses that board. So the first book is called Spirit Board, and the second book is The Labyrinth, and then the third book, which I still have to write, is going to be called The Corvus, because there is a crow in this book that helps them. So there's a helpful crow.
Oh my gosh, this does sound spine-tingling. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
The cemetery's enough right there. Whoa.
Sounds very interesting.
Well then, how did you get involved with the Pierce Mansion? Just after having seen it on TV?
Well, I became aware of it in about, I think it was like 2006. I lived nearby, and somebody told me a shortcut about how to get across Gardner, the Staples, and it took me right past the Victorian Mansion, and I just sat there at the stop sign and stared at that house because I had seen that house on Ghost Hunters already, so I knew the house was haunted. I knew what it was, and it was for sale. And I was sitting there looking at that house, and I'm like, oh, my God, I can't believe this house is for sale. And so I, kept my eye on it, and it was for sale for 2 years. And then Edwin and Lillian purchased it in 2009. And, I still would drive by, and I'd, catch glimpses of them outside or, pulling up the driveway. And not that I was stalking them or anything.
No.
I was probably stalking them a little bit. But they opened the house up for investigations, and about probably 2010, because they had started already having all kinds of experiences, and they wanted answers. And I was one of the first groups that went in to investigate, and I just kept every chance I got, I would investigate there. And 2011, they had a Halloween event, and I volunteered to help out with that. And that's really when I became friends with them and started, helping them with other events and helping them at different times. So at that point, they were moving out of the house. They moved out of the house shortly after that. So I helped the caretakers go in and just check the house out periodically.
Okay, well, how about if we get a little bit into the ghosts of the place? How do you feel about S.K. Pierce? Do you think that he was as illustrious as everybody thought he was?
Everything points to the fact that he probably was. He was on the board he was a board member for several of the banks in the town. He was on the foundation for determining where the high school was going to go, and so he was very well thought of in town.
He was.
But on the same hand, on the other hand, he was very wealthy and he had a lot of very wealthy friends. So, wealth buys security. It buys people being quiet about things. So it's possible things happened there. I can't tell you for sure because none of the historical records are going to show that.
No, I get the feeling that things happened. If things happened, it would have been not known to him necessarily. That's the feeling that I got.
Right. So that's where we rely on the mediums and psychics that come in and the different things that they say. And there's different responses. Some feel that he was very upstanding, and others feel that, he might have had like a little men's club going on there, where it was kind of a free-for-all, that behind closed doors anything happened. And, so it could go either way. And I hate to really state it either way. I think that it's possible. Let's just say that.
Would you like to give everyone just a brief history of the mansion and what happened?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Would you like to give everyone a brief history of the mansion and those whose hands it passed through?
Oh, how many people owned it?
Yes, who owned it? Yeah. And the purported murders?
Edwin built the house in 1875, and he really only lived there for 11 years. He died in 1888, and then the house was passed down to his second wife, Ellen, and she died in, I believe, 1918. She died pretty, not that, she was she lived there for quite a while, but then it passed down to his sons, and there was a lot of bickering over who owned the house, and there were a lot of court documents, and then going back and forth and fighting. So it ended up in the hands of the youngest son, Edward Pierce, and he turned it into a boarding house. So it was a boarding house all the way up until the 40s, and at that point the house was really starting to fall apart and, become a little bit seedier. And there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of stories that are kind of legendary but not maybe true, and one of them is that he lost a house in a card game. And his daughter's still alive, the owner, Jay Stemmerman, that purchased it. And she denies that ever happened. She said her father purchased the house. What I think happened, I've seen the deed, and it's listed as $0.00. So there's no money changing hands on the deed. So I think probably the house was really in bad shape, and Jay was a friend, and he said, I'll take the house, and you can still stay here. So Edward stayed in the house, and he took an apartment in the basement, which, it's not much of an apartment. It's, it's a basement. And he stayed there until he died. And Jay Stemmerman really only lived there for a few years off and on. He was wealthy. He was a musician and a painter and an artist. He had houses numerous places, and he eventually just abandoned the house. But, he put $100,000 into it right after he purchased it. So he put a lot of, he probably saved it from demolishment at that point. And then the house was abandoned until pretty much until the Vos bought it in the year 2000. And they lived there for 6 years, and they put a lot of money into it, a lot of renovations. And then they ended up getting a divorce. So they had to sell the house, and that's when Edwin and Lillian purchased it. So really not that many people have owned the house.
Yeah.
It was in the Pierce family for the longest time.
Oh, how do you feel about Jay Stemmerman's temperament? Being an artist, was he flighty?
Well,
was
without lawsuits being thrown at me, a whole lot.
Well, just your feeling on his temperament.
I can say that he was an odd person. His
yeah.
paintings, I've seen his paintings,
Really?
pictures of them, and they were very, very strange. The one in particular was one half-naked woman, and she was half like Centaur, and some kind of demon was coming after her, trying to stab her.
Ooh.
And then there's other paintings they look like they're full-blown orgy scenes, and so he definitely had a very twisted side as far as his art goes.
There's definitely something kind of strange going on up there.
Yeah. So then the next step in my mind would be, would he be capable of murder?
Yeah, I don't know, and I can't speculate on that without, knowing more. But, yeah, some people think that the history of the house turned a lot darker during that period of time. So, who knows what went on behind closed doors.
Because they never really found out who the prostitute's murder was that stayed there, correct? They're not sure.
No, in fact, they don't even have documentation there was ever a prostitute murder there. As far as the records go, the only females that have died in that house were Pierce, women.
Mm.
So if a prostitute truly did die in that house, she was carted off somewhere else.
It's just one of those things that was swept under the carpet.
Yeah, well, they would have had to have removed her. There's no way, because she just wasn't, she wasn't there.
Well, then you were going to say something?
I was just going to say then, so that's one of those stories. It may or may not be true.
Right.
We'll probably
well,
never find
it is
out.
interesting, though, because some of these psychic mediums do pick up on that a prostitute died in that room. So,
yes.
And not all of them have come in with the knowledge that, with the stories. I mean, I know some people do like to come in and they like to hear all the history and they want to know everything that happened. But other people like to come in and just be surprised or find out what they can find out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So, almost everybody that comes in picks up on a woman in that room. So it's hard to say whether something really happened or not.
So there's probably something to the story.
A high probability to the story.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, apparently there were 3 children that were detected in there. Edwin had said one night that he heard children running around upstairs. And that same night, he sensed 3 children that came right into the room, into their bedroom. Now, there was a sighting of a little boy in blue. There was a sighting of a little boy with a white shirt and black pants. And then, of course, there's Rachel, who was 2 years old. So we know what happened to Rachel. She died of, gastroenteritis?
Yes.
And
she basically died of the flu.
Okay.
She was only 2 years old. That was Edward's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
youngest daughter. She died at age 2, which, it's kind of funny because, not funny, but odd that so many deaths happened in that house.
Yeah.
And they could have been prevented with proper hygiene, hand washing. And it was one of the few houses to have running water inside.
Really?
At the late 1800s. And, S.K. Pierce himself died of pneumonia, with some heart complications too. And then, his granddaughter, Rachel, died of, it wasn't the Spanish flu because she died before that went through, but it was influenza.
So there supposedly are 3 children. So what I was thinking was they're not all accounted for, and it could very well be that they're being a prostitute. Maybe that birth might not have been recorded, or the birth of maybe one of their servants, that might not have been recorded. So if one of them were murdered, that wouldn't have been recorded either. So all you would be left with is the energy that the psychics are picking up on. So do you have any feeling about who the 3 children are?
I do have a couple of theories. I mean, I've been there for a lot of the psychic mediums walkthroughs, and a lot of them have felt that the little boy in blue and the little boy in white are the same boy. But, again, hard to say. But he was a servant's child. And then somebody else came up with information that I wasn't able to track down and document, that a little boy was killed in a car, or hit by a car out in front of the house, which is kind of interesting because the two of the Pierce sons opened the 2 first car dealerships in town. One opened a Buick dealership and the other opened a Studebaker dealership. So it'd be interesting, that perhaps this little boy was killed by, one of the vehicles that, they may have even purchased from one of the Pierce dealerships.
Oh, that's a thought. Oh, that's
That'd be an interesting connection, wouldn't it?
Yeah. All right, what about the 3rd floor window? Was there ever any conclusive evidence if someone had been pushed or if they jumped out the window? Because Heather Anderson as well as Lucky Bell Camino picked up on something in that area.
Yes. It's, and it's also interesting, too, when Lillian was overcome for those 3 days, she kept having visions of the sidewalk outside the front of the house with a V on it rising up to her.
That's right.
And almost like she was falling through the window.
Right.
So, no, there's no documentation of anybody ever falling to their death outside that window. But, multiple psychic mediums have picked up on somebody falling through the window. So, again, wealth does buy, quiet.
Silence,
It comes
Yeah.
to stop. So it's hard to say.
Speaking, it's kind of jumping to the end of the story, really, but speaking of those 3 days, do you think Lillian was possessed? Or what was going on?
I think she was definitely overcome. If you want to call it a possession, yes, but it wasn't like a demonic possession. But there is an entity in the house that does try to take people over. And, I saw it when I interviewed Heather Anderson for the book, and she was attempting to channel one of the female entities in the house, and she was overtaken to the point where she nearly pushed somebody out the window. So we know that one of the entities there is capable of doing that.
And that was a female
I
entity.
think she definitely was overtaken for a solid 3 days.
Yeah, and apparently Edwin was too, to some extent.
Well, I think it was more mind control on that, almost.
But something was affecting
Something
him,
he
though.
was being
He
affected.
just kept away. Edwin loves Lillian. He would have never allowed her to just languish on the couch and not
Right.
she didn't get up once, not to go to the bathroom, not to eat, not to get a drink of water.
That's bizarre.
I mean, he would have never allowed that to happen. So they were definitely keeping him away from her in some shape.
Yeah.
That would have been my ticket out of there. I couldn't put up with that.
My ticket out of there would have been long before that.
Yeah, a lot of people would have gone out a lot faster, and but they loved that house, and they still love that house. They're still holding on to this house and paying, this huge mortgage every month for a house they can't live in. They love the house.
It's amazing. I don't know how they can afford to do that. It's just a crime to put so much money into the place. And, it happened, the same thing happened to Stepperman, the same thing happened to the Vos. They all put a lot of money into the place and wound up leaving. Very
Yeah,
sad.
it makes you wonder if the house is pulling people in when it needs renovation. It pulls them in, and then once it gets what it wants, it pushes them back out again.
It does make you wonder.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thought, isn't it? Yeah.
There's definitely more at work in that house than just walls and windows and a roof.
So many people have had experience, which I hope we can segue into shortly after our break, which is coming up right now. We're going to have to take a break for just a couple of minutes, Joni, and then we'll be right back. So if you'll just hang on for a moment.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Supernatural Magazine, the UK's newest paranormal magazine, provides support to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. It is the magazine's goal to bring every aspect of supernatural news and research from around the world under one roof to create a universal platform for all those interested in the supernatural. More information is available at supernaturalmagazine.com. You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM, and we'll be right back after this short break. The video portion of Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, is sponsored by Spirit Chasers Paranormal, a paranormal investigation and research organization in Northampton, New Hampshire. Professional, respectful, courteous. Check us out at spiritchasersparanormal.com or email Willie at spiritchasersparanormal.com.
Okay, you are tuned to WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth, West End. And this is Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. A quick note from the community calendar, the Stratham Senior 76ers. The 76ers is a local organization open to all seniors of Stratham and surrounding communities. Meetings are held the third Tuesday of each month from September to June from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Stratham Fire Station Municipal Room. A potluck lunch is provided by members, followed by information speakers or programs. Fun field trips are planned by the Stratham Parks and Recreation Department. Informative flyers and telephone numbers are available at the Stratham Wigan Library at 10 Bunker Hill Road. For more information, call 603-778-7600 or 603-580-1230. And programming on Portsmouth Community Radio is made possible by you, our members, and by Living Innovations, helping Seacoast seniors and people with disabilities to lead a full and happy lives at home and in the community. For more information, visit livinginnovations.com. And Lynn, do you have some upcoming guests to the program?
I do. For our upcoming guest lineup here, starting with next weekend, which is November 29th, we had scheduled a surprise show, and we finally decided that it's going to be entitled Strange New Hampshire.
Strange.
And we're going to be covering some of the lesser known and maybe better known stories and legends in the Seacoast area as well as in New Hampshire. On December 6th, for his third appearance on our show will be Brad Olson. He's publisher and author of 7 books, and we'll be discussing his second book in his esoteric series called Future Esoteric. And the topics include ancient alien contact, conspiracy theories, and how to achieve personal power. On December 13th, we're welcoming back Preston Dennett, and he's a longtime MUFON investigator and author of many books on UFOs, and he'll be making his second appearance. December 20th, right now we've tentatively got booked Mr. Dennis Stone, and he's the owner and operator of America's Stonehenge in Salem, New Hampshire. And he'll be joining us depending on his schedule, but he'll be discussing the mysteries of New Hampshire's megalithic site, there we go, in Salem. And on December 27th, we wish you all Merry Christmas, and Spirit Radio, The Paranormal Experience, will be airing a rerun show because we're taking the holiday off.
It's going to be our first week off since we started the show over a year ago.
Right. So. And then on January 3rd, we will be welcoming Merrill Frankhauser to Spirit Radio. This will be his first appearance, and he's studied extensively on what he believes to be an alien undersea base off of the coast of Malibu in California. And that's our upcoming guest list, Willie.
And that is it. And tonight we have on the phone the author of Bones in the Basement, Joni Mayhan. Joni, welcome back.
Welcome back, Joni.
Thank you.
So, I'm not quite sure where we left off, but I had several questions I wanted to ask you anyway, so I guess we'll take off with that. Once Ellen inherited the Pierce estate from her husband, she was running it with Frank. And then wasn't there a fire in the furniture factory?
It did. It burnt down in, I believe it was 1937 that it burnt to the ground. So, and there's some pictures. Actually, the picture that I've seen looks like it was taken from the Widow's Walk of the Victorian because it's from the right angle.
Oh,
but
my
yes,
gosh.
It did burn down to the ground.
Now, was there any suspicion that perhaps it might have been set?
I didn't even get into that in the book. It did cross my mind because there were so many battles between Ellen and Frank.
That's right.
When S.K. Pierce married Ellen, Frank was very upset because Ellen was only 6 years older than he was.
Yeah, that'd be
so
hard to take.
a lot of Gardner Society saw Ellen as a trophy wife.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell, just by looking at the historical records and the court documents, that she was a very strong woman, and she fought back. She didn't allow herself to be, bullied or put in her place. And she had her own safe in the house, and it's still there. It's one of the few things that survived as far as artifacts in the house. So, when S.K. died, Frank tried to sue Ellen for custody of his 2 younger siblings.
Which I think is crazy.
And they, possibly said he could have control over their ownership in the house.
Right.
Hard to say, but she fought him right back, and she won custody. So there were a lot of battles. So it wouldn't be out of the realm that it was deliberately set.
Well, was there any insurance involved? I mean, did they lose most of their money with the furniture factory gone, or not?
I don't know, to tell you the truth. I did not dig into that aspect of it. I stayed away from the business aspect and just focused on the house. But I'm assuming that it was probably very heavily insured because they were very thorough kind of people.
I would think
I can't
so.
imagine that they would have lost everything.
But it would certainly contribute to Frank's anger in the event that that happened. So what happened to Frank?
Frank, he ended up moving out of the house, and he lived 2 doors down. He had a house that it almost looks like a mini Victorian, and he ended up he got married and had 4 daughters, and a lot of his family is still in the area. So I've been trying to track them down. The Gardner Historical Society was trying to do some research for me to try to find that family so that I could, because we don't have any pictures of Ellen. We have no pictures of Frank.
Really?
No pictures of Edward. The only pictures we do have are of S.K. Pierce and his son Stuart.
And Stuart, and isn't there one of Edward? Which one is in the dealership? There's Stuart and Frank had a dealership too,
Stuart
right?
and Edward, but the one picture of in the car was Stuart. So we have 2
okay.
pictures of Stuart.
Well, the reason
That's all that's surfaced. So, I have tried to find these people, but as of yet, I haven't been successful. But, I'm still looking.
Well, the reason I asked about Frank and what really became of him is because wasn't there one of the EBPs from the basement that said that one of the residents, the dark residents down there, was a Frank?
Some people have gotten that. I don't know. I really feel it's Edward in the basement. But,
Edward.
Everybody's gotten a lot of, we've asked what's the name of the little boy, and we've gotten the name Franklin. So sometimes I think they're just messing with us. They just don't name that.
Could very well be.
Could be, yeah.
Because, it's just not adding up.
No, it doesn't. And there's no clear, we've asked these questions, we figured we'd go right to the source and ask the ghosts. And we get really mixed responses, and you can't really, everything that we have as far as documentation is, from psychic mediums and EVPs, and you can't really go on that and state it as fact. You can say it's speculation. But,
That's right.
Unless you have the documentation, and a lot was covered up. They're not going to document a lot of this stuff. You're not going to know what happened to the little boy if it was foul play.
No, I know it. Well, given that there's, seems to be a dark controlling entity, it might be giving disinformation. It might not be allowing the other ghost to say something truthful.
Mm-hmm.
Just like
Absolutely. Well, and there's been some psychic mediums that have picked up on the cistern in the basement, that they feel that the little boy accidentally drowned in the cistern, and his death was covered up. Maybe he was a servant's child, and it would stand to reason, it would. If a little boy climbed up there and maybe was floating a sailboat or something or a ball in the cistern, and he went in to try to reach it and fell in, that cistern is a good 10 feet deep.
But wasn't
he could have easily drowned.
It's quite a ways off the ground,
cover
though.
Up his death? It's just another speculation, another possibility.
Yeah,
another possibility. Well, which brings me to, I guess it's probably where the name of the book came from,
right.
Bones in the Basement. Lillian's experience with getting up in the morning and going down and digging.
That was strange.
Yes, a very strange thing. And
she's overcome.
Yes, apparently overcome. And it's my understanding the bones were eventually sent off to, what was it, New York?
That's what. Well, the local cops first.
Normally, they would have been sent off to Boston.
Yeah.
They should have been. And
they were never seen again, right?
No, they were never seen again, and nobody ever got back to them.
And they were lied to about.
After a month or so, called the police department and said, what happened? What was the analysis? And they said, oh, they're not human. Don't worry about it. And that was all. They never got a report or documentation or anything. So I think there's a story there too. That's not being told. So either, I don't want to, make any claims because we don't know.
It's all speculation.
Were the bones inadvertently lost, or did they just not want to get into it, or I don't know. It's just all so strange. I mean, we've thought about it and talked about it. Why did they never come back with an official report on what they were? If they weren't human, then what were they?
Right.
And, we've seen pictures, and they've shown pictures to doctors, and they said, well, it does kind of look like, from what we can see from the pictures, it looks like a child's pelvic bone. So, I don't know. It's another mystery.
Yeah. That was another mystery possibly related to a child drowning in the cistern.
Well, the cistern is so far off the ground, though. It wouldn't be plausible for him to just get up there and start playing. It's almost like it'd have to be put up there. I mean, it was well over his head.
Unless he climbed a ladder or something, maybe somebody did. They did have an old bell system in the house, and some of the tags are hanging right there by the cistern. So, what if somebody was working on the bell system? They had a ladder pushed there, and the little boy climbed the ladder. Now, I don't know. I think there's a lot of scenarios.
Well, when I saw
that lead to that, if that's indeed what happened.
Well, that bone fragment really looked like a human pelvic bone. I couldn't tell from how large a child, but it looked like a child's bone.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a strange story there.
And it wasn't found in the cistern; it was found in the kiln. So someone was trying to cover something up.
Where they used to cook, and they would burn trash just so that they would not keep, they wouldn't heat up the house during the summer. They would cook down there. So it was buried. When they bought the house, that kiln was full of ashes. And when she was digging, she pulled out fragments of newspapers that were dated 1910 that were above where she found the bones. So we know at least the timeline that it happened before 1910.
That's right.
Yeah. Does anybody have any idea what got her to get up that morning and go down and dig down there?
Oh, I think that she was overcome. I don't know if it was the same entity or a different entity. Maybe it was the same one, but I think they really wanted her to find those bones. And I think, even if they weren't human, I think that the symbolism was there, that they wanted her to dig for more information. It's like I think they saw her as somebody that might be sympathetic enough to finally help them, bring some justice to what happened to them.
Well, Joni, it being bone, DNA tests could be performed and to eliminate some of the questions.
But not after the bones have disappeared.
No, but didn't she have some fragments left?
Yeah, I don't think they're still around. I think that they were inadvertently lost. Because I did ask. I said, well, can I see the fragments? And nobody seemed to know where they were.
Oh, it just deepens the mystery. How do you solve that, really?
Yeah, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Darn.
Yeah, I don't know. And, perhaps, there was some kind of influence with, another entity in the house. Maybe it didn't want them to know that information.
Yeah. That occurred to me, too. What kind of personal experiences did you have there?
Well, I've hung around there quite a bit, and I've had quite a number of experiences. One time I was there investigating, and I was up on the 3rd floor, and there was a group in the basement, and there was also a group on the 2nd floor. And we heard the most tremendous crash going down the grand staircase.
Oh, that's right.
I always say it sounded like somebody dumped a bunch of bowling balls down the staircase. It was that loud. And so we ran down, and the group from the basement ran up, and the group on the 2nd floor didn't hear it at all, which is really weird because they were the closest. And the front doors were locked. There was nobody there. And there was no explanation for the sound that we heard, but it was horrendous. It was so loud.
Now,
That's one thing. I've seen a lot of shadows. I've seen things move out of the corner of my eye, and then you go to look, and it's not there. I've seen on Halloween we went and we were just handing out candy to kids in the neighborhood, and I was standing in the kitchen looking down the hallway towards the dining room, and as I was standing there, I saw something materialize that looked like it was kind of oval shaped, and it was white, and it was off the floor probably a couple feet, and it just hovered there, and then it zipped out through the doorway.
Oh.
So, and I went not too long ago, we were sitting at the kitchen table, and I saw a hand, just a hand, not an arm, just a hand, materialize like it was holding on to the door frame in the kitchen. And I saw it for a good maybe second or two, and then it disappeared.
Did it appear
So
to be male or female?
Seen a lot of things and heard a lot of things. Nothing blatant, like right in my face, like a lot of people have seen. But I think the entities there like me. I think they know that I'm there as a protector and there to share their story. I'm not there to hurt or harm them. So I think that's part of it. They don't want to scare me. I'm useful to them.
Well, maybe when they're finished with you, though, that'll be a different story.
Yeah.
Well, in some ways I had to kind of cut my ties and to move away because I was finding myself drawn there way too often. And a lot of other people have felt the same way. I mean, it's just compulsive, like you just want to go back. And I think my theory on that is that, in order for them to perform and do the things they do, they need energy.
Energy, yeah.
So I think they select certain people that they like. Maybe they like the flavor of their energy.
Yeah.
But they pull them in again and again and again. So it's almost like they're pulling me in for feeding time.
Well put.
That could be.
Yeah. I would be drained the next day, despite grounding and shielding, despite wearing religious medals, protection stones, prayers. It doesn't matter really what I did. I'd come home and I'd feel like I was just out of I'd been drained. So and other people feel the same way. So I think that they have a pull on people when they need to be fed.
I do want to mention we're getting close to the end of the hour here. We got about 5 minutes left. Could you answer a question for me? Down in the basement, just outside the summer kitchen, there's some keys hanging on the wall there. Are those real keys or wooden keys?
No, they're just decorative.
Oh,
she bought them because she thought they looked neat.
Oh, okay.
They're not real.
Okay. No, I was just wondering because I was in there one night, and there was some other investigators in the basement, right at the bottom of the stairs. And I came down the stairs, and we all kind of looked over at the same time, and those keys were swinging back and forth. And nobody could figure out why they were, and I didn't actually go over to check and see if they were real keys or just wooden. So I've been wondering.
They're
ever
heavy.
since.
They're made of some kind of metal, but they're
okay.
Recently made, like they're decorative.
Okay.
On
all right.
antiques.
Well, yeah.
Well, I had two quick questions here, real briefly. That crash on the staircase, did it sound like furniture falling or did it sound like a person falling?
It sounded like a whole bunch of people running down the stairs.
Oh.
It was really loud, heavier than normal people's footsteps, like amplified.
I didn't know if maybe someone had been pushed and murdered or had fallen, but it doesn't sound like it was that kind of a sound.
No, that's frequent. They've heard that a lot of times. I mean, they would hear that when they lived in the house, so that's pretty common. It's just one of the tricks they do there.
Yeah. My other question has to do with the tunnel. Now, there was supposedly a tunnel opening that they thought maybe they shuttled kids back and forth from the house to the factory. But toward the end of the story, you mentioned another entrance was discovered for the tunnel. Is that the authentic entrance?
Yes, we figured out where the real tunnel was for years. It was being pointed out in a different area.
You're right.
And I happened upon a picture that Mark Rowe had taken. They found the tunnel entrance when they were redoing the sidewalks outside, so they went in the basement and they opened up that tunnel, and they put a time capsule in it. So, and then they bricked it back up. So I was able to compare the picture of the open tunnel with the basement. I found the header for it, and we were able to figure out that was indeed where the tunnel was, that we've been wrong for years telling everybody, oh, here's the tunnel entrance, and it was actually on the wall facing Broadway, West Broadway.
Okay, you say a time capsule? What did you mean by that?
What's that?
You mentioned a time capsule?
Yes, Mark Rowe, the previous owner, dropped a time capsule into the tunnel before he sealed it back up. So if somebody ever opens up that tunnel again, they'll find a time capsule from like 2006.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Well, then the significance of the original purported tunnel entrance, that's pretty much where Edward slept then, right?
Right. Yeah, that section right there was right where Edward slept, they think, right, because it was right in front of the heater.
And that's
where a lot of people feel the dark entity.
The dark entity,
it does kind of correspond.
It does. connect.
Okay. Well, what is going on with the mansion now?
It's abandoned right now.
Yeah.
It's just sitting there. We did set up a nonprofit foundation to try to help preserve the house.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
we were able to raise money through a GoFundMe, and then also through my book profits, I did donate half of my book profits to the foundation.
Oh,
for
that's
4 months.
great.
And we weren't able to raise enough money to replace the roof, which is in bad shape, but we were able to secure it. We got it patched so that no more waters are able to leak into the house.
Good.
But next, as soon as the weather's, we have a contractor ready to patch up the eaves, keep more of the weather out. I mean, it's a Gardner landmark, and we hate to see anything, we hate to see it fall into further decline.
Yeah, there was rumors maybe that they were thinking about turning it into a bed and breakfast. Is that true, or is that just?
Well, they wanted to. Yeah,
they
they
wanted to.
definitely. I mean, wouldn't that be a cool B&B?
Oh, yeah.
It'd be awesome, but
Yeah, the haunted
it would
hotel for
require
sure.
a lot of money. So they would
They
have
would.
to have either an investor, some kind of, windfall of money coming their
Yeah.
way to do it, because the house would need a lot of renovation work before they would be able to do that.
So how long have they been the owners? Since 2006?
No, 2009 they purchased the house.
Okay. And they still own it. That's 5
They
years.
still own it. They moved out 2011,
Oh,
and they're still paying for it.
that's really a mountain to climb.
It is. And I got to say, Edwin and Lillian are both very nice people. I've met them both, and I wish them the best of luck with the place. And,
Yeah, they're wonderful people. I know. I don't know what the future holds for the Victorian, but I hope that it ends up still staying.
I know.
Intact.
I hope so.
And this
It would be
house,
very tragic if the house, went into decline to the point where it's past the point of no return.
tragic history. This is the Victorian Mansion in Gardner, Massachusetts. We
Good,
failed to mention
Gardner.
where it is, but it's
Yes.
Gardner, Mass.
Gardner, Massachusetts is right. And
Correct.
on that note, we are out of time. Websites, books, Facebooks, whatever you want to plug.
Well, I have a website, JoniMayhan.com, and my books are all available on BarnesandNobles.com and Amazon.com. And I have another book coming up in January. I'm going to start writing. I'm going to write Michael Robichaux's True Paranormal Story. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh,
He's a
great.
paranormal investigator. I think he's been on your show before. So that'll be my next venture.
Oh, excellent.
Excellent.
My gosh, you haven't stopped, have you?
Oh, I don't plan on it either.
That's fantastic, Joni.
Yeah, that's great. And Bones in the Basement is doing very well, isn't it?
It is. It's doing very well. I've gotten really good reviews. It's got, I think, 4.7% out of 5 stars is what
Ooh.
it's rated. So people are really loving it. I'm happy. I'm glad I got to tell this story. It seemed like a shame not to be able to tell that story.
Well, you did a tremendous job organizing all that information. It's
Yes,
just
you did.
really interesting. Very well done.
Yes, and we thank you very much for joining us here on Spirit Radio.
And we'll have to have you
for
back,
having
Joni. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joni, and you have a good night.
You're welcome.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, well, that takes care of Spirit Radio, the paranormal experience for another week.
And thank you all for listening. Good night.